Councillors should only use the raise your hand function to request to speak and only speak when invited to do so by the chair. Please switch off your camera and microphone when not speaking, and remember to set your mobile phone to silent for the duration of the meeting. Any views expressed by any speaker in the meeting are the speaker's own, and they do not necessarily reflect the views of the council. Please can councillors be aware that the webcast will continue to be streamed live 20 seconds after the close of the meeting. This is due to a time delay in transmitting live. I'll now confirm the names of the remaining members of the committee. Councillor Pauline Bell, Councillor Angela Benham, Councillor Joanna Collins, Councillor Dom Elliott Starkey, Councillor Simon Evans, Councillor Linda Gruby, Councillor Madeline Hall, Councillor Ian Huddleston, Councillor Pete Inman, Councillor Pam Reddy, Councillor Jill Scott, and Councillor Jean Todd. We'll then go through the agenda, starting with any apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We just have apologies from Councillor Pam Reddy.
Thank you. Move on then to...
Sorry, Chair, I am here.
Oh, thanks, Pam. Sorry, I didn't catch you. Got you now. Thank you. I'll mark you in.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
I think we've probably just got apologies from Councillor Madeline Hall, who's recovering after surgery.
I'll make a note. Thank you.
Okay, we shall move on then to disclosures of interest on matters before the working group this evening. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other interests? Nope, we shall move in again then to the minutes of the previous meeting. Are we all okay that they accurately reflect our last gathering? Just quickly go through them page by page, anything page 3 and page 4. No, in that case, we shall move on to delivery updates, starting with climate change. Oh, and probably something that I should have done at the start, but which I didn't. Should have introduced Helen Clark, who's joined us to take on things around climate change. But I think we're starting off with Gillian for this one.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Possibly just to, if those who don't know, our last meeting I said goodbye to you all, but I'm actually staying on part-time just until we've got a replacement, just to help out a bit. So if anybody thinks they dreamt that, you didn't. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see? I've got a bit of a delay. Can everybody see that? No. Anthony?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're just going to do a bit of a whistle stop tour of kind of where we're at with some key projects. This isn't everything. I'm sure you know that what the stuff we do is a lot wider than this. For some reason, I can't move forward. Try this. So with the climate change plan and the nature plan, which Katie's going to do a little bit about later, we just wanted to link it into how it fits with the borough plan. Obviously, having a healthier community is better for residents going forward, thinking about adaptation and how we help protect them as the climate does change, but also healthier air, all that kind of stuff. So it links very much there. Obviously, we do a lot of work with housing, which FICA is going to do a little bit about. So it links very much into that aim. I'm sure you all know that the Green Job agenda is huge, and we're actually
You've muted yourself.
Oh, I didn't touch anything. Okay, sorry. So the Green Job agenda obviously is very important to deliver all the changes that we want to see. So we are working with partners on some elements of that, and obviously improving the environment for climate change. Obviously, that's why we're all here. And obviously, number 5, hopefully, if we did all that, things will be smarter and more efficient and, dare I say, cheaper. There we go. So in terms of us as an authority, we have had quite a lot of change within the delivery team. We have a new director who I think is joining us. I can't see her just now, Anna, who I'm sure you've all met, Anna Eastgate, who's very key on driving this agenda, which is fantastic. Helen is the new interim principal officer, who's again looking at a more strategic piece and giving us more capacity within the team, because I think we get quite involved with delivery, and we need that bigger sort of oversight to make sure we're going in the right direction and we're doing it efficiently and smartly. My role, I've been in post for 3 years. So originally I was climate change and biodiversity, but we now got Katie, so we've expanded the capacity there. And then obviously in the last 6 months we have FICA as well. So our little team keeps growing and growing. So we're being able to get involved and make more delivery. Within the council more widely, there's been a lot of changes with heads of service and other capacity changes in engagement around things like parks, the Move More plan and air quality. And we've also been working with colleagues on assets, looking at those social housing projects around retrofit, which have been pretty successful in delivering some work there. You'll have seen this before, but just as a bit of a reminder, the climate change and biodiversity plans don't just sit in our little but expanding team. They sit right across the council. So each bubble is one of the service areas. The ones that are highlighted in blue are the things that sort of cut across everything. So without the support functions of legal, finance, training, procurement, etc., we couldn't deliver anything. So although they're not necessarily leads on projects, they're like a back office function that we really need to be able to get things moving. So yeah, there's quite a lot there, and I'm sure you can have a look at it in your own time. So just a few highlights. The way we work, we've done lots of things around how we function as a council and help leverage into the agenda. It's very wide-reaching and complex with all the different strands. So these are just a very small few things that we've done. So staff now can have an electric vehicle and a salary sacrifice scheme. We just need to make sure there's somewhere for them to charge them when they come into our offices or our hubs across the borough. The leisure centres, obviously Buxton Leisure Centre's got solar panels and air source heat pumps now, so it's a vast investment there that will really drop our operational emissions vastly. And I know there's work going on at New Mills as well, which will make that run more efficiently as well. Climate change and biodiversity is on every council report, so it's really vital that as councillors you look at those elements when you're looking at something, to make sure they're scrutinised, to make sure that they're properly included in those. And we did do some induction maybe a year ago now on how to use sort of principles like this donut economics wheel, which when you think about all these different elements that aren't necessarily just climate change, but around sustainability more widely. Procurement is interesting because we have a sustainable procurement policy, but legislation has just changed around that. So we're just trying to figure our way around to make sure that we're still compliant, but getting as much as we can to push through the supply chain, asking the right questions for services and goods that we buy. And also in carbon literacy training for staff and councillors, we do that through some of our partnerships. We'd also like our strategic partners to take part in that or similar. I know the leisure teams are looking at something that's specific to their area, which is fantastic. So just to try and sort of spread that thinking out throughout all the services that we're engaged with. High Peak traditionally has always worked very closely with external strategic partners, Obviously, we've got the new level of the East Midlands Mayoral Combined Authority, which we have had funding from for retrofit, which we used for social housing, which Lisa Marie gave a presentation on our last meeting. We also have funding for a local area energy plan, which we'll start working with them on in June. And that looks at future-proofing our infrastructure around energy going forward to help us make strategic decisions, build into the local plan, and hopefully bring an investment to the region. So every authority in Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire will have one of those. So from a regional perspective, it would hopefully make us more attractive for companies to come and invest and put that infrastructure in to decarbonise the grid, electrify heating and transport, etc. With the County Council, we've got quite a few things we work with them on. There's the electric vehicle infrastructure, which they are leading on, but we're supporting. That is to enable residents that don't have a driveway to be able to access charging for their vehicles. So some of them will be through lampposts, some will be in our car parks. There's a massive project to deliver that as well. We work together on flood risk management. Obviously that links to the adaptation piece. We have an energy group, which is all of the boroughs and districts. We work together on collaborative projects. There's also a climate change group. Similarly, we do the same. And our planning colleagues worked with the County Council to deliver a really fantastic toolkit to support developers on how to embed sustainable thinking into their proposals, which is on our website. The Local Authority Energy Partnership, we've been members of that for over 20 years, I think. And that's all the authorities, again, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire. So before the Mayoral Combined Authority came along, we were already ahead of the game with that. And we worked with them on all sorts of emerging topics for peer-to-peer learning and also collaborative delivery. So we've managed to get funding for the Local Authority Retrofit Accelerator, which is a research project looking at the supply chain for retrofitting houses. So working with colleges to make sure we're training the right skills for the right people, looking at the supply structure, infrastructure, the information, and also how to engage with householders as well. The Midlands Net Zero Hub, they are sort of sub department for the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, and they sort of manage a lot of the funding that comes into the region, and we work quite closely with them on retrofit and some other renewable energy initiatives. March's Energy Agency, I think you met with Jamie. They deliver all our fuel poverty engagement and advice out in the field, so they're very knowledgeable. They also, I haven't put here, they also are the lead for a heat project, which I think we've had 2 or 3 events in High Peak working with those able or willing to pay households that wouldn't access the grants that are available to help them understand the pathway to decarbonise their home and the pitfalls as well as the opportunities. The High Peak Green Network are many of the green groups in the area, so we work with them, attend their meetings and help provide funding and things for projects as they see fit. High Peak CVS, they do a lot of our grant management for those grants, but they also link us into lots of other projects and opportunities, so they're kind of our all-seeing eye when it comes to community engagement. And then, of course, the sort of strategic delivery partners there, which I know you'll all be aware of. So yeah, so it's not just us, we're kind of greater than the sum of our parts because we're working with colleagues across the area. Jill.
Thanks, Gillian. Couple of things. One I'm really, really pleased about, and one that I'm disappointed isn't there. I'd like to learn more about the EV charging points that are for people who don't have off-street parking. They live in terraced houses, etc. So I don't know if at some point we're going to be told a little bit more about that, because that is something I've had residents asking me about. And the other thing is I'm really disappointed that there's no mention of public transport, because both East Midlands and Derbyshire County Council have a big role in public transport and active travel. You know, Derbyshire County Council manage the bus service improvement plan funding, and they're one of our partners, but it's not mentioned. And we know the statistics show that bus use has gone up by 15%. So a lot of people use buses. And also, obviously, the East Midlands Combined Authority have got, you know, the remit for public transport and active travel. So I don't know if it can, is it too late for that to be added? Because, you know, it's great we've got EV charging points, etc., but it still does exclude a lot of people.
Yeah.
So can it be added in that sort of section on partners, something about public transport and active travel, please?
Yeah, I think I was just sort of listing the things that we're directly involved with. We know that there's all this other stuff going on. I know Anthony's very involved with that as well. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, this presentation is just for you, so it's not going to go anywhere else. So, but yeah, we are aware of it. And we do work with, I didn't put them on there and I should have done, was the Buxton Travel Forum as well. So as I said at the beginning, it's just a little bits of it. We couldn't put everything on there, but yeah, absolutely agree. But I think we did, in terms of the EV project, I think we did mention maybe adding that on to a future meeting to get somebody from the county to come and talk about that. So
that would be good.
That might be something.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah. Anthony, you want to come in before Joanna, or?
No. All I was going to say sort of was, as you said, sort of the list is mainly things that we've been directly involved in or that we've directly influenced, which of course for, you know, in terms of EV charging for terraces, etc., or public transport, we're involved in, but not necessarily directly, or at least not at the moment anyway.
Yeah.
Joanna.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of comments. One is that climate change and biodiversity doesn't always appear on reports in other committees. You'll have heard me point this out. And I think it does suggest that there's still some staff training to be done or awareness raising on these issues. Because, I mean, yeah. The other thing is that it would be interesting at some point to have a bit more detail on some of the local partnerships, such as the energy group and the climate change group. You know, what is High Peak doing with them?
Okay. Yeah, so with the groups, there's quite a few. So like that local, as an example, the local authority retrofit accelerator, that's a collaborative project. It's led by Bolsover, but as a collective group through that energy group, we've worked together, and the local area energy partnership. There is a bit of crossover to get that funding in the first place, but also shape how it's delivered. And we're linking in with our regen colleagues, you know, working with sort of the skills agenda and colleges and things. So a lot of it is about that collaboration and being, you know, being able to bid and lobby for funding to do those kind of things, and having a bit more capacity as well. It helps just lighten the load sometimes as well. I've forgotten what your first point was. Sorry.
Well, it was a climate change and energy, because you mentioned two groups, energy group and climate change group, but I guess if that's how you're working.
So your first question, sorry, Joanna, was on the reports.
Yes.
So on the reports, there is a section at the end, which should be filled in. So I suppose,
isn't it? That's what I'm saying.
Well, I suppose, you know, as councillors, you should be pushing back and saying we want, you know, be a bit, because we don't see all the reports.
No,
we have got it on there, but yeah.
A more general comment that I think some of the staff still are not aware that this cuts through absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Even if it's about, I don't know, audit.
Yeah.
it's still, you know, affect. I mean, obviously, climate change and in particular has impact on action on climate change, has impact on finances, and vice versa. You know, if all the finances go elsewhere, then we won't be able to do work on climate change. So it's very disappointing when those bits of the reports aren't filled in.
Okay, I think you need to push back a bit on.
Well, I do.
Okay, let's move on. And we just wanted to
Any
mention.
other questions at this point,
sorry.
or can
Carry on.
any other questions at this point, or can Gillian continue? I'm seeing no more hands, so carry on.
Thank you very much. With the Climate and Nature Fund that we offer, there's 42 community action grants have been provided since 2022. There've been all sorts of different things, from children's growing groups to allotments, men in sheds, cycling, walking to school initiatives. There's a vast array, and you know, you're very welcome to have the full list if you want. And they're right across the whole borough as well. So there's lots of really lovely projects within there. We have developed, as you know, our own branding, which we use across all social media channels, which has, we kind of made sure that there's something with this and with the nature piece, there's something all the time to keep it front of mind. And that from the comms team, they've said it's generally quite well received. And we've also done some work with schools, which I think Katie's going to do a little bit more on afterwards. And in terms of the waste, AES have trialled loads of different technologies for fleet. They are really serious about doing that. They've invested quite a lot, and they also have done some mapping around routes to make sure with the new legislations of additional pickups that's quite efficient. There's new legislation coming in for businesses, there's news coming in for householders, I think next year. So there's obviously that support piece with the businesses. We've got some comms out around sort of fly tipping, also wildfires. I know that's not directly linked to that, but it kind of is in a way. So yes, they've done lots of engagement, lots and lots with schools. We're steering them to follow the waste hierarchy rather than just dealing with the waste, because obviously if we can prevent the waste in the first place, that's better. And we've done lots of support for repair cafes, and you know, the Buxton has I think it's the first library of things in Derbyshire as well, so we're very very lucky. Simon.
Yes, thank you. It's just a bit of a pick up on the on the last slide, and also this one, where we talk about comms and engagement. And in the previous slide, you talked about how it was getting good reception and feedback. The comms team tell you it's very important, of course, that we do. You know, we could do all of these things in isolation and in bunkers, but unless they're reaching the people that we need to reach, it's kind of a half a job, as it were. So I just wanted to know what tools and analysis were we using to measure that engagement and the effectiveness of that as part of the comms message.
Oh, you've put me on the spot there. I know they have a tool. I couldn't tell you what it's called. Somebody else might know the answer to it, but they do have something that can kind of pick up different stuff, some kind of AI thing across social media.
So we're measuring sentiment as well as voice and all of these things, as well as engagement.
So. I believe so, but yeah.
Can we at some point in the future have some, not necessarily in this forum, but somewhere, have a kind of a session with comms on how they're doing that? Because that would be useful, I think, across quite a lot of our work.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yes, I don't see that being a problem. But I'll bear in mind that the engagement and comms are kind of two hands of the same piece, if you like. So I'm sure we could manage. I'm trying to think of the name of it. So I'm not going to guess. Okay. And I think, sorry.
Just for information, the comms strategy went through the last meeting at corporate, and One of the planned updates to go back to corporate will be around, particularly on sort of the monitoring side of it, because we're just coming up to the end of a contract with the piece of software, the setup that we're using. That's the name of it, which I've completely forgotten, but it'll come to me at some point. But the piece of software that we're using, the contract for it is coming up later this year. So we're just in a bit of a process of assessing how useful it's been, and whether we continue with that or move on to something else. But reports on that will go back to Corporate Select.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think Fika, are you going to come in here?
Yeah, sure. Are you okay to just leave the screen on? Is that all right? Because it's only one slide.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. So hi everyone, I'm the Domestic Energy Officer for High Peak. So I'm going to be talking about the Shared Prosperity Fund today and give you a little bit of update on it. So sorry, my screen's just gone blank. Bear with me 1 second. So I'm going to talk about the energy efficiency project that was funded through UKSPF, and I think Jamie Walls from Matches Energy Agency spoke about it in January in one of these forums, and he also touched up on the objectives. So I'm just going to repeat the objectives again, and then tell you about the results and the delivery that we had. So the objective was to create a data analysis piece to support future funding and to create provide a delivery comprehensive plan for engagement and attend more events. And the target was about 16 events. And another objective was to increase home visits across High Peak and to create a pipeline of potential households to benefit from the future funding. And to provide small measures, which were DIY small measures and energy efficient appliances during the home visits, and to support distribution of the LED light bulbs pack for our social housing residents. And another objective was to refer households to energy grants and be present with their EV vehicle to provide information and display on having energy efficient homes. And so these were the objectives, and I'm very pleased to say that the project had significantly outperformed its original targets in a very short space of time. They supported around 4,178 individuals and delivered energy saving measures to 4,035 households, which was well beyond the initial aims of assisting 500 people and 200 households. The core activities included the distribution of LED light bulb packs, the temperature cards, and energy advice material to 3,777 High Peak Borough Council tenants. Vulnerable residents also received additional installation support with their LED light bulb packs, so they could ring in. And somebody from our repair team will go in and support them with that. Matches Energy Agency, as Jamie mentioned in January, were our partners on this, and they provided enhanced energy advice, attending 23 community events, which exceeded the 16 that were initially planned. And they conducted around 88 home visits. And the events were also in Buxton. They were across Buxton, Glossop, and they went into Edale and places where people were vulnerable and they were very secluded, so they didn't have a lot of support. So that's what the aim was, to target those individuals. And the events were really pivotal in identifying home visit candidates. And I don't think we would have been able to do that without strong partnerships with community groups, DWP centres, local cafes, And also, as Gillian mentioned, in terms of comms plan and engagement, social media was also pivotal. Social media campaigns and our collateral, which led to householders being aware of the service, understanding where to access and who can provide them with free impartial support and advice. As you can see, our leaflets also mention, who they can bring and the energy advice, energy tips. So the collateral was designed, wasn't designed just specifically for it was for everyone. So it doesn't matter whether you have whether you're a private tenant or whether you're a homeowner or you're a council tenant. So if anybody can use that information, and when they need support, they can ring in and speak to somebody at Marshes Energy for further information, advice, and support. So your income bracket and your household tenure didn't matter. So during the home visits, over 250 low-cost energy-saving appliances, such as heated blanket, microwaves, and air fryers were given out to households, along with more than 180 DIY efficiency items like the draft excluders and radiator foils, and most of them were installed during the home visits that Marshes Energy Agency advisors did. They also provided them with bespoke advice on heating, installation, and energy tariffs. They also made referrals and advised them about the energy grants that were available, like the eco funding and HOG2 funding that we had available. So, and they also provided assistance to address energy debts, supported them with their British Gas Trust Fund applications if they had energy debt. So throughout the home visits, Marshes Energy Agency also identified that main demographics particularly were single women or single moms who were often living in poverty, in fuel poor homes, and with either an expired EPC or very poor EPC rating, and majority of them had health issues as well. One of the aim was to provide training to former community hubs and frontline workers, but it was limited due to time constraint that we had with this funding. And however, they have recommended that if we do have future funding available, we could have more partnership opportunities. So with the data analysis piece that was commissioned was to help target and engage with householders in the future with future funding such as the Warm Home Local Grant that's coming up. And overall, the project demonstrated strong community outreach and delivered substantial energy and financial support to households across the area. And in the end, I just want to say thank you to everyone for their support and in engaging and arranging and inviting MEA to their local events. And that's it from me, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Spiker. Any comments or questions? Gillian?
Yeah.
Or Jill, sorry.
Do you mean me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Spiker, I think it's absolutely brilliant, and it just goes to show how when you actually do something by going into people's homes or going into community hubs with quite sort of low cost devices or resources, that people really take it up. And I think it's amazing the number of people that you actually engage. I know we had something in Hayfield, and it would, I know you said there's possibly more funding, so do you think next winter there's a chance that we might have something like this again, even if it's not perhaps through Marches, but we might be able to fund a similar program of giving out, kind of low end, LED light bulbs and air fryers and that kind of thing again? Do you think it's possible for next winter?
That's something me and Gillian have been talking about. And I think it will be fantastic to carry on with this support that we are providing people. And we've had really good feedback from everyone as well. So probably just before winter, actually. So
Yeah.
we are looking into it. So we do have some funding available. So I think Gillian knows more about the funding than I do. But yeah, we are really looking into doing that again, because it was really well received. And I mean, residents couldn't believe how much help they had with, with little things like energy saving tips. It's just a matter of changing behavior. So that helped quite a lot as well.
And that's the thing, it's low tech. It's not like having to put some complicated piece of equipment in your house that you'll never be able to learn how to use. It's just something really simple. And these little temperature cards, I feel they should go out to everybody, just be posted in everybody's doors, because they're really helpful.
Yeah, we did post them to all the all the social all our tenants, and the private householders. They are available in the at the Buxton office as well, so anybody can come and pick them up.
Come get some more.
Yeah.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jean.
Yeah, I just like to say I think it's a great result, FICA. You've sort of exceeded those targets hugely, and I think you didn't mention the tea towels that were given out that have got those tips on.
Sorry.
I know I picked one up for my daughter when I went to an event at Zinc.
Yeah, so we did tea towels as well, which was a brilliant idea. They were very well received by all the residents. So the marches were giving them out during our events. So with the tea towels, we only had kitchen tips, how you can save energy in your kitchen, which is just as important. I actually don't have a picture of it, but I do have the tea towel right here with me. So I don't think anybody can see it, but it does look fantastic. So yeah, they were really popular.
It's something. I remember my aunt giving me something like that about 30 years ago. So it's good that these sort of things carry on.
Yeah, they have all the information. If somebody needs to ring in and they don't want to talk about their energy issues or anything else in terms of energy, they can ring up Marches Energy in their own time.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jean. Gillian.
Just to follow on from that, I think part of what we tried to do with the collateral was design stuff that people wouldn't just get a leaflet and throw it away. It would be something that they use, so that when they do need advice, they go, oh, I know where that is. So that was the idea with both the temperature cards and the tea towels. So yeah, that was, and also they're for anybody. They're not just for a certain demographic of people. So that was part of that. So well done, FICA.
Okay, thanks, FICA. I see no more hands, so we'll move on to the next bit, which is the nature and biodiversity.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to talk through a couple of the key sort of achievements and projects that we've been working on in the nature and biodiversity side of things over the last year, so mostly 2024. Gillian, could you, thanks, next slide. So in May last year, High Peak Council adopted a nature recovery declaration. So it's sort of similar concept really to the climate emergency declarations that were made back in 2019. And it was an initiative kind of brought forward by the wildlife trusts, who are really keen to get local authorities across the UK to kind of sign up and make a declaration regarding the nature emergency, and also kind of list out some commitments and sort of targets that we'd like to work towards over the coming years. So that was adopted back in May last year, which was really positive. And then the Plan for Nature, which is the sort of really big evidence-based sort of strategy and sort of had suggested actions for nature recovery, was sort of developed over the last couple of years, really, and last year was kind of the crunch year for working with the Wildlife Trust and getting that consulted on and sort of updated to reflect the views of residents and in a final form. So that was adopted back in the executive meeting in December, which was really good. And there's been I think it's led by the Woodland Trust, but there's a website that's sort of been publicised recently called Nature Emergency. Similar concept to like the climate action scorecards, which some of you might be aware of, but it kind of does a review of all the local authorities sort of across England and kind of gives you sort of a kind of rating based on how, you know, good and positive your commitments are to protecting and enhancing nature. So High Peaks scored quite well on that list compared to some of the other authorities across the UK. So just put a couple of stats in from that because I thought that was quite interesting, really. So yeah, so we're one of 27% of councils who've actually declared a nature emergency. So that's only really a quarter of the local authorities across England that have actually declared a nature emergency. And then only 14%, and we're in that 14%, have committed to develop a nature-based, evidence-based action plan for nature recovery. So that's our plan for nature. And then 9% of councils have committed to embedding nature recovery into all sort of strategic plans and policy areas. So that's kind of part of the wider piece on how, you know, the climate and nature team is working a bit more strategically across the whole of the council and linking in with other departments and trying to get that really considered, you know, in the council's agenda. So in addition to those, we also, Gillian touched upon earlier, have been doing quite a bit of work on the comms and engagement side of things. So we've got our kind of climate and nature-based branding, but the sort of graphic designer and also the comms team have been really good with pulling together some kind of reusable assets that we can keep putting out on social media sort of throughout the year to keep climate and also nature at the forefront of the public's mind. So just got a couple of examples there, and they kind of vary, you know, based on sort of seasonal kind of assets throughout the year, but also what we want to use them for as well. So like the ones that are more relevant for like when we go and work in schools and stuff, so things like the wildlife detective and bug hunts and bio blitzes. So yeah, they've been good, and I think quite well received as well when they've gone out on social media. So we've got quite a few now, but that was just a little snapshot of them. So I think that's it for that slide. So we've also been doing quite a lot on the partnership working side of things. So a couple of slides ago, Gillian was touching on the kind of climate partnership working strands. And we've also been doing a reasonable amount on the nature and biodiversity side of things in partnership working. So Derbyshire County Council's been leading on developing this local nature recovery strategy, which we've kind of mentioned, I think, at previous climate change working groups. So this is a strategy for the whole of Derbyshire, but we've been working with them quite closely as a supporting authority and attending sort of the kind of steering group meetings and working groups and making sure that the work, you know, that we've done with the Plan for Nature is very much fed into that and sort of things aren't being replicated, but also ensuring that our sort of, you know, localized kind of some more specific knowledge again is feeding into that process as well. So we've been working alongside the other borough and district councils, in addition to lots of other stakeholders as well, on that local nature recovery strategy for Derbyshire, and that's due to launch in summer this year. I don't think they've given an exact sort of date or month yet, but I think it should be around sort of July time. There was a public consultation held on that earlier this year, and I've sort of me and some of the planning officers have sort of been quite closely involved with that and in terms of reviewing the documents and feeding into that process. We've also done a bit of work in more work partnership working with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, sort of outside the Plan for Nature, on their Wild Peak project. So it's an initiative they've sort of developed last year, and they held, I think it was 2 funding rounds, which were around sort of autumn time last year. So we were sort of members of the sort of panel for those funds, and kind of it was good to see money getting awarded to some really good sort of projects. Obviously it was a Derbyshire wide fund, but there was a couple of really good high peak ones in there that got funding for nature-based local initiatives, so that was really good to see. Next slide, please, Gillian. And then wider kind of community working and community engagement working. So we've been doing a bit more on kind of the school side of thing, which is a really good thing for us to get involved with. And I think possibly something historically we've maybe not, looked into really as a borough council, what with education sitting with the county council. But it's been really, really good to get involved with things like the Buxton Schools Climate Conference. So FICA, myself, and also Karen, who was an engagement officer for Parks, attended that. I think it was about November time last year, to sort of, again, get the branding out there, represent the council's climate and nature and energy initiatives, and also just explore a bit more how possibly as a borough council we can link up and work a bit more with schools. But it was a really good day, and there were lots of great organisations there representing various climate initiatives, so that was really positive. And then aside from the schools work, and we've been doing quite a lot of working with community groups on various other biodiversity and nature projects. And again, as we touched upon before, supported a lot of local groups with awarding grants under the Community Climate and Nature Fund that we run as a council. So we also held a kind of, I think it was called a Go Green or High Peak Green Day, which was a wider kind of community engagement day, building upon events that we've held, similar events in previous years. So that was opened up to climate and nature groups across the High Peak, to kind of have a bit of a workshop, shopping kind of day, and work out how we can work together a bit more closely in the future, where the links are, where the gaps are, that sort of thing. So that was held at New Mills Town Hall in October last year, and that was really well attended. So I think it's something that is, I think, an aim under the climate strategy about holding annual events. So again, it's the type of thing that we're looking to replicate year on year, and also develop and work out what works best, and what's kind of the best outputs we can get from holding those kind of days. We're also more recently, so this is kind of this year, last sort of month or two, have been looking to organise some kind of bio blitz, so a bit sort of citizen science kind of biodiversity monitoring sort of events, with support from the wider High Peak Biodiversity Network and also Buxton Field Club. So we've got some provisional dates in the diary for those. Can't remember exactly what they are off the top of my head, but I'm sure we can get those circulated round with the minutes after this meeting. But we're kind of just scoping them out at the moment, really, so the comms hasn't gone out on them yet. But that was quite a key suggestion from the Wildlife Trust in the Plan for Nature, was to kind of the councils to kind of develop and support more of those citizen science monitoring type events, and also use those actually to help us as well. So rather than just organising them, as those kind of community events, we're hoping to kind of have a bit of an angle on those, that some of the data collected can help feed back to the Parks Department in relation to changing some of the mowing regimes. So there's, I think the comms on them have been held until after the elections, but the Parks Department, it's kicked off already. There's a few pilot sites across a few locations in the High Peak where they're looking to essentially reduce some of the mowing to move towards an annual kind of cut and collect mow, which is good for biodiversity. So lowering the nutrient levels in the soil and encouraging floristic sort of wildflower diversity. So that's just kicked off, which is really good, and I'll touch upon that in a later slide. But it was kind of, we're starting to explore how some of the local groups can help with the monitoring side of things and feed back that data, so that in sort of, a year or two's time, that the areas that are having these changes to the mowing regimes, we've hopefully got the data to support, actually this has been really positive for encouraging, what native wildflowers to come through and encouraging that biodiversity. So that's really positive. Next slide, please. And the last one, I just thought I'd do a very, very, very broad summary of some of the kind of cross-departmental work streams and projects relating to biodiversity that have been in development really over the last year or so. So we just touched upon before how with the, the climate and the nature and the energy agenda and works, it very much is, cross-cutting across, all the areas of the council. So biodiversity in particular, there's quite a big connection there with regards to the work that the Parks Green Spaces Department do. So things like changes to the mowing regimes for improving biodiversity, and also looking to review the management plans for some of the main parks that we have across the High Peak, and identify opportunities where we can increase biodiversity at our parks that we own as a council, whilst also maintaining their amenity value. So that's been quite an interesting big piece of work that's been in development over sort of the last 6 months or so. And then there's the sort of slightly more obvious link with biodiversity net gain. Now that's been in force about a year now, I think. The legislation came into force last April off the top of my head. So it's working with the planning department and looking at our systems and processes and procedures as a council, and how we can effectively, implement BNG quite strategically to sort of get the outcomes we want in terms of nature recovery, and also working with neighbouring authorities to try and align our approaches as well. So I think that was the final slide on the biodiversity stuff, so I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks,
Jill?
Katie. Jill's got her hand up.
Thanks, Katie. You've done loads. It's absolutely great. Just a very quick question. You say you're identifying sites that you can trial this annual mow. Can we nominate sites?
Yes, yeah. I think it's a case of it's been obviously led by the Parks Department. They've picked a few pilot areas for this year. Mainly, I think they were limited by what they could pick in terms of there's that kind of wider piece on investing, AES investing in equipment they need to actually do the cut and collect. But it's definitely something that the intention is to build upon that and expand that out in the coming years. So although it might just be there's the set pilot sites for this season, once that the kind of results are kind of back from how that's actually worked in practice, over the summer of this year and the autumn time, and also the kind of results of AES with their equipment that they're investing in, and sort of when they get that and what they pick and what capacity that has, it's definitely something that the intention is to build upon that in future years. And yeah, I think nominating sites, councils nominating sites is a good idea. It's just with the caveat that they possibly won't be included in this year's changes. Yeah.
Are you looking for like community groups to support the work on that, or are the AES team going to be able to manage it themselves, the whole cut and collect, or do you want volunteers to support it?
I think it possibly depends on the site really. So with the kind of main parks and larger green spaces, I think it would very much be an AES led thing, because they are investing in the machinery, looking to invest in the machinery to do the cut and collect. But I know there's kind of smaller patches in a few of the parks and just various areas in the High Peak where community groups have actually taken on the management of those areas. So it's very much like, you know, reviewing things on a site by site basis, I guess, and working collaboratively and seeing what works best, really.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Joanna?
Thank you. Yeah, it's great that AES is getting the machinery to cut and collect. That's really good news. And you have done massive, as Gillian said, Jill. I've got a couple of comments. I think what I said about climate change and not always appearing in reports is even more relevant to biodiversity. I don't know if there's any training. I mean, I know the parks team and AES are really aware, but it may also be relevant to other things. So I wonder if there's any council-wide training on biodiversity. Another thing that I was going to say was that, I mean, there seems to be really good partnership working going on across you guys. I mean, across the climate change and biodiversity agenda. And the BioBlitz, you know, getting local teams, local community groups to look at what's going on in the parks, for example, is great. But the Green Day, I felt that a sort of lesson, sort of observing it, was that although it was very buzzy, everyone was talking to each other and everything, it was actually quite unclear what the outputs were, and particularly the outputs for the council. So I wonder if in the planning for the next Green Day, you know, there needs to be a really clear sort of pathway from the activities to outputs for the council, and for the council working with groups, that it's not just a sort of great get together. Because if so, why is the council doing it rather than anyone else, kind of thing? Yeah. And the other question I was going to ask was about biodiversity net gain. I don't know if it's really for this group or for planning, but how is that being monitored?
Okay, so I'll try and cover them in order. You'll have to correct me if I've missed anything off. So on the training side of things, biodiversity training, that is something that we've identified as quite an important sort of piece. I think that we'd like to push that and get that developed, really. There was, I think, towards the end of last year, we'd kind of started sharing around details of a bit more of a self-led type training on the biodiversity side of things. And I don't think that had the best uptake. And also I think the module itself is quite, you know, short and maybe a bit too high level. So I think we definitely want to explore training requirements, you know, in the biodiversity side of things, both for officers and members. We just need to have a think about what the best way of doing that it would be, and whether it's, you know, for example, with the climate and the carbon literacy side of things, I think that's been quite successful. So whether it's there's something similar that could be done for the biodiversity side of things, I think would be quite important for us to look into. So that's definitely something that's been flagged, and we're looking to get some training, move forward really on that side of things. I guess with the Green Day, I agree. Like, I think we just maybe need to have a think about what we want the purpose of the day to be, and outputs and that sort of thing. Because I think obviously the last year's one I attended was my first one, but I think they've been maybe slightly different year on year. So it's just really working out what we want what function we want those days to serve, and whether it's something that we could possibly have, you know, as an agenda item, for example, on this meeting, is what do people want to see and get out of those days. That might be a good idea. to make sure that the next one, you know, is maybe it's slightly different. Maybe, you know, we run it slightly differently, but make sure we get out of it what we want to get out of it. And then the BNG the question was about sort of monitoring and how we're keeping a track of things. Yeah. So again, there's quite it's quite a sort of important piece of work that's going on at the moment. So I've been working quite closely with the planning department and the planning policy guys to sort of discuss and try and progress establishing systems that we have internally for things like tracking and monitoring the BNG sites that are consented. So it's a work in progress at the moment, but it is progressing because there's obviously been, you know, that need identified for us to actually have robust and good systems in place to keep a track of the sites. We have the statutory requirements for reporting as well. So the first one's actually due, I think it's 1st of January next year. So it essentially is before Christmas this year, and data from the BNG side of things will feed into that. So it's very much something that we're looking to kind of get bottomed out over the next couple of months, really, to stand us in good stead for when we actually have to write that statutory report as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joanna. Jean.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the mowing actually, because a few of these areas were started a few years ago, and they've basically expanded on those mowing the areas that have been left unmown, and to do with the machinery, it's more a matter of assessing them via this year's work, as far as I know. That they've not actually bought new machinery yet. I think they're looking into what they need, because obviously the cut and collect is much more difficult. It's been managed by the first time I think it was picked up by a farmer, in actual fact, at Temple Fields. Okay, and I think with the biodiversity net gain, a lot of that is certainly with planning applications. Derbyshire Wildlife Trust are involved deeply with the analysis of how much can be done and what can be done, that kind of thing. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know obviously parks are leading on the sort of wider mowing changes. So I'm not 100% aware of exactly where they're up to with the procurement of the machinery. I just know it's something that is being kind of progressed at the moment. I think AES had a few trials with a few different types of machines, and I think they've already kind of learned some lessons as to which ones, you know, really didn't work and which are the ones they actually would probably want to look into a bit closer when it actually comes to the procurement side of things. But I don't have you know, exact timescales on when that's all going to happen. But yeah, you're right. I think there's the odd site as well where it's contracted. So, for example, to like a local farmer to actually do the cut and collect into bales. So yeah, I guess like they might want to go down that route, you know, and keep doing that for one or two of the sites if it's working well already. But then equally, as we're expanding more and more of these no-mow areas, I think it's definitely going to be sooner rather than later that investment needs to be made into the proper cut and collect equipment. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. And with the BNG side of things, the planning department has a service level agreement with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. So actually, when it comes to kind of the specific applications and reviewing the BNG metrics and that kind of thing, they provide that under that ecological advice under the service level agreement. So again, when it comes to the kind of monitoring and keeping track of what's going on the BNG side of things, Derbyshire Wildlife Trust are definitely going to be an important stakeholder in those discussions.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jean. Thanks, Katie. I can't see any further hands. So I think we're almost ready to move on to the next bit. But does the slide currently on the screen, is that the start of the next bit or to come towards the end of the next bit?
That's the finale.
Ah.
This just summarises really kind of a lot of what all of us have just been talking about, of what's emerging and building on, you know, what we've learned over the last few years. I think trying to pull together all the different housing strands to make that better, using that data analysis piece that FICO was talking about to really use funding as well as we possibly can, linking it to our damp and mould work, and as I say, bold facilities grant. This list obviously caveating all the local government review stuff that we don't know what's coming. These are just the things that we know are happening. There's other things that are emerging, a lot of work linking into health. So with one of our partnerships, the energy partnership, we're started looking at how we can work better with health providers. There's a review out just now from the local government association asking us how much of this climate change agenda should we be making statutory for local authorities. So that's something that we have to look at and think about, you know, if that comes in, how that will impact us. Will it make things easier, harder, etc. So yeah, this is really just a summary of some of the main strands of work we're doing, with that sort of pestle analysis of just always keeping an eye on the horizon for what's coming. So that is now the end.
Okay, thanks, Gillian. Any further comments or questions from anyone? Joanna.
Yes, regarding the review of local government responsibilities, yeah, I wondered if the council was going to respond, and even if it isn't, would it be an idea to send a link to this group so that people can respond as individuals?
Yes to both, I think. If officers are willing, and have got the time to put together a response, then we'll respond as a council. But if not, there's no reason why we can't circulate the link for anyone else to respond, either as well as or on their own.
Yeah, it's quite a long consultation, but of course you don't have to answer every question.
And in some cases, with those long consultations, it may well be best not to answer all the questions.
Yes, but sometimes they repeat.
But we'll get the link circulated to folk, and we'll get the team to have a look at the consultation and see, in terms of deadlines, if we can put something together for a more formal response. But we'll get the link circulated so that people can respond themselves.
Yeah, the deadline's quite soon, I think.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Joanna. Thanks, Gillian. If there's no other comments, we shall move on to our next bit, which is the working group delivery model proposals and next steps. Helen.
Thank you. Yeah, bear with me and I'll share the proposal PowerPoint. Can everybody still see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, fabulous. Okay, so building on from obviously the local government reorganisation, it's a great segue into this. And I'm aware that Anna attended, Anna Eastgate, the Executive Director for Community Services, attended the last meeting in February to kind of take you through sort of the context, local government reorganisation in the context of sort of what that meant from a climate strategy perspective, sort of the delivery of climate change action plan, and the collaboration between sort of High Peak Borough Council and the Staffordshire Moorlands District Council in terms of opportunities for some joint working there in terms of sort of economies of scale and building of capacity. So that's just a little bit of background on there in terms of sort of where we found ourselves after the last meeting. And I think it was agreed that we would come back to this current meeting with a little bit more information around sort of what that group might look like and what that might offer us in terms of moving forwards. So I've been obviously with High Peak now for I think this is my 4th week. So I've met with a variety of sort of the Democratic Services team. I've met with Anna. I've met with a number of members and the team, obviously, to look at sort of how we use what we've got to the best of our advantage, and sort of looking at the key sort of drivers moving forwards, what we wanted to include to building capacity and delivery sort of moving forward. So the focus and the remit that I was given was to look at sort of, we've got 2 years left from a delivery perspective. You've seen all of the strands of work from across Gillian, Fiker and Katie's delivery streams, all of the different fabulous pieces of work that they're doing. Some of those they lead, some of those they support, and some of those they enable. And obviously what they have is a convening and a coordinating role across the wider 2 borough and district authorities. So really kind of bringing together other teams to all contribute to the wider delivery plan that we've got in place. So on your screen, you can see some of the key considerations that have been proposed and talked about. So we've proposed to include Plan for Nature as a more kind of formal arrangement in this group. If we were to combine it moving forwards, we'd look to continue on a bi-monthly basis. We'd look to have the combined group as more of a kind of a directive, accountability, output and outcome based delivery model. So really looking at sort of what is being done over the coming months and years, and sort of what we want to focus on to make sure that those outputs match your ambition and your drive for the future. So really key to that is something that's been discussed previously around reviewing the climate strategies and the action plans. So again, looking at the action plans, there's around 80 different streams of work on there. We've got 2 years before we kind of have that local government reorganisation piece starting to really hit in earnest, and the discussion really was around what can we do in the next 2 years that is a legacy. You know, what can we leave to sort of go forward into those combined authorities. And really looking at sort of defining key priorities for short, medium, long-term activity and pulling those out so that we can have officers and members to kind of work together on the art of the possible for that, to make sure that we're maximising our outcomes. So the governance model, which I'll come on to later, sort of needs to represent that intent. So once we've pulled out the key themes, we'll need to look at sort of bringing in officers to be on board with that. We'll need to match, funding, officer time, and obviously the team that you see here today, their time and their priorities around that, to make sure that we're really pulling in that direction that you want us to be over the remainder of that term. So in terms of the governance structure, then I think this pretty much mirrors what previously has been in place, but for some time now, the officers working group hasn't been meeting. So really looking to refresh that, re-energise that, and push that forward. So again, once we've got the priorities and the actions that we want to achieve, bringing those officers together on a bi-monthly basis so that we can understand what delivery looks like, so that then we can bring those officers into these bi-monthly meetings to look at what the updates are, what the challenges are, what the the achievements and the next steps are, with a view to then obviously feeding up and through into the governance, into the relevant governance streams, and any key decision making vehicles that sort of in between those as well. Just sort of a visual there in terms of sort of road mapping, where we're looking to kind of where we're starting from and where we're hoping to land. So obviously the starting point is to look to merge the working groups, and to build in new governance mechanisms around sort of annual reports to make sure we've sort of hitting the mark with those reports, building in a sort of a mid-year point review so that we can have a look at where we are and how we're doing, and any kind of key risks or issues that we need to course correct for. At the moment, we're reviewing sort of the delivery to date against the action plan. As I say, there's sort of 80 work streams ongoing, which you know, we've got the quantity. What we really need to look at is the quality and focus on some of those key elements and grouping them together and allocating sort of project leads for those, so that we make sure we've got somebody who's driving that within each of the services. Looking at meeting with lead officers and members. So I've met with some of the members, meeting with some of the lead officers, and that needs to happen much more moving forwards in terms of formulating the plans. And the facilitated session is really to try and match intent and ambition with delivery capability and resource. And when I say resource, I mean staff as well as finance. So obviously it's great to have aspirations, and we want to be ambitious and we want to reach for the stars, but we need to make sure that we're realistic in our targets and our focus is based upon our ability to deliver moving forwards. Once we've done that, obviously we can look to agree kind of the strategy and the action plan over the coming couple of years, and launch that moving forward with a new governance mechanism in place as well, to make sure that we've got all of those things in place moving forwards. And just a proposed timeline there, and it is a proposed timeline, just to kind of give some idea of the flow of you know, where we are and where we want to be moving forward. So there's quite a lot going on in April and May, as you can see, and then May into June in terms of the facilitated session, and hopefully the first combined meeting, if the intent is there to do so, and then really pulling together sort of that strategy and action plan refresh to pull out those key themes and match that with the governance and the delivery sort of risk assessment piece that goes alongside that. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and just really kind of gauge support or any questions, or if that was something that people were supportive of.
Okay, what's your thoughts and comments, Jill?
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Helen.
Hi.
Pleased to meet you.
And you.
No, it looks really good. You know, it kind of looks very streamlined, and it's quite exciting, the idea of kind of trying to get it all into the 2 years. I just got one question. What was the reasoning behind the decision to exclude the public?
I think from my understanding, things like the annual report and any kind of decision making over funding or you know, kind of those key sensitive discussion points. From my understanding, the thought process was that we would be more able to share and be more open in those forums to have kind of open discussions amongst ourselves, is my understanding. I think the annual plan's previously been shared in this forum, but I think from my understanding, the desired approach would be to approve that sort of offline amongst members, so that we can kind of have a look at any sensitive issues that needed discussing and air those and go through those with a view to then sharing that externally. It's absolutely not to exclude the public, and what we'd be keen to do is make sure that through the way we operate at those meetings, so more presentation based style, and to be able to sort of upload those onto the website afterwards, so there's a transparent link in terms of what we've discussed and where we're going with things that affect sort of community groups and individuals, but also to have kind of that ability be better with our comms, essentially, to make sure that we're being more transparent, but in a different way, really, just to aid that decision making.
Right, okay. I just think of all the different groups and committees, this one is the one that works most closely with the public. So I hope that those links are still maintained in, you know, in some way or another.
Absolutely, and I think that's really important. There's, as you've seen from the team, you know, there's lots of community-based work. Our work, you know, is very much out in the community, and very passionate about maintaining that and keeping that golden thread through service delivery through to the community. But I think with there being such a finite period of time for us to really drive this agenda, some of those decision-making pieces are really crucial, that we don't lose time in kind of trying to agree those out of sync of these meetings. So it's really to sort of streamline and drive those decisions is the rationale.
No, which is what, obviously, that's what you can see from your presentation. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Oh, is Anthony frozen?
I think you may have paused.
He's just on mute.
Right.
No, go ahead, Joanna.
Yes, thank you. That's really good. I mean, it's really good to have more of a sort of project management approach, I think, given that we haven't got very much time. So thank you very much. I just wondered how the joint working group, which presumably is with Staffordshire Moorlands, is going to work. I mean, I haven't seen their plans, so I don't know how much those overlap, but just in terms of sort of officer and member participation.
Yeah, so, and I think that's one of the reasons that Gillian kind of wove into her presentation the wider strategic work that's happening across the county and across MCA, because obviously what we're doing is we're keen to partner with between Staffordshire Moorlands and High Peaks, but we've got to have one eye sort of facing out into the wider sort of strategic county-based delivery programme. So, and this is obviously where, when I talk about, you know, the leading, supporting, enabling agenda in our team, we're very much convening a lot of that information in, so making sure that we are that tie between sort of the wider county piece as well as our delivery pieces internally as borough and district authorities. So the idea is that obviously when we sit down and as High Peak look at sort of what your delivery priorities are over the coming months and couple of years, that those pieces are woven in, and we will be, you know, repeatedly sort of updating any kind of wider strategic pieces into that as it progresses across time. So yeah, the partnership piece is not just between the districts and the borough council moving forward. It's still very much with one eye on our wider strategic partnerships as well. That's really crucial.
Right, and so the working group will be across the two I mean, it'll have members from each council, and then obviously the officers reporting into it.
I'm not familiar with, Gillian, could you just come in there and just enlighten me in terms of this working group, because it's not one that I've been to yet, so forgive me.
Yeah, I think the idea is that this group that we're at here now and the Moorlands comes together, and I guess the membership would change. I guess I think that's all to be agreed as yet. Yeah.
Apologies. Yeah. No, thank you. So yeah, the two working groups, essentially the climate change working groups. Yeah, absolutely. So there'd be equal membership, politically balanced across the two groups, coming into one strategically focused delivery group.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies.
No, not.
I was going to say, just with the idea of putting the two groups together, it's come to you as an idea, because there's still some further work to be done on whether it completely works in terms of going a bit more formal in terms of political balance, because that may well not work, particularly for our friends over the hill who have got slightly more complicated arrangements in terms of there's a number of groups of independents, etc., that they would probably still want everyone to be involved in the same way as we are now, which is why we went with a working group rather than a more formal committee, so that anyone who wanted to be involved can be involved. So it's to test the air, see what views. If there's any strong objections, then we'll go away and have another look at it. If there isn't any strong objections, then we'll come back with a more formal proposal. Well, actually, we'll probably come to annual council in terms of to group leaders first, and then to annual council in terms of getting people put on the right committees, etc., so that they're all ready to go after annual council. Okay, any other thoughts or comments? So from the lack of strong objections, I'm taking it that there's a general okay for us to look at a joint working group. The intention would be that it would still meet virtually like it does at the moment. So obviously, we're not sort of building up a climate cost in terms of everyone having to drive either to Leek or to Buxton for the meetings, etc. Jean.
I was just going to mention, I thought it would be good if everybody had all the members of this new group could have the carbon literacy certificate. and if they don't have it now, to sort of work towards it.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something that can be arranged.
And I think we can have sort of shorter periods to have it done if a whole day is difficult.
I've got Helen, then Simon.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think both Katie and Gillian kind of covered up in their presentations that training is a key priority for us moving forward. So we've looked at a variety of different models around sort of doing training at induction for members of staff, new members of staff, and around sort of looking at how we combine biodiversity as well as climate change into one kind of training session. So, and if a day is too much, then how we do that in a kind of a half a day session as well. So if that's something that you wanted to look to for members, that would be something that we could look to support. And just to say that links into sort of one of our wider priorities moving forwards as well. So absolutely on board with that.
Okay, Simon, you're muted. Sorry, you're still muted, Simon.
I turned off the volume rather than my microphone. I was going to say, it's just to reinforce that I was booked onto the last session, but a whole day for those of us who are employed or even self-employed is what nigh on impossible to manage. So even if it was to be split down over 2 or 3 evening sessions or bite-sized chunks, but definitely worthwhile getting involved in that. But it's just not something that can be done over a whole single day, really, generally, for those of us who aren't or who are otherwise engaged.
No problem. We can take that on board. Okay, so I'm not hearing any strong objections. So in that case, then we'll look to sort of manoeuvre our arrangements from the current working group to a joint working group with our colleagues across at Staffordshire Moorlands, where there are particular issues that are just very much a sort of a high peak focus, then it may well be that we have a couple of sort of separate meetings, but in general, sort of the process going forward will be where it's appropriate to do so. We'll sort of meet as a joint working group, and we'll come back with further details in terms of numbers, etc. And that then brings us to the end of this evening's agenda. So I can thank everyone for your attendance and enjoy whatever else you're doing.